You hear all of the social justice people, the big Eva voices. Where are they on this issue? Where are they on calling out inflation and crony capitalism?
If you are printing the money, who are you in debt to? Like, it seems like, does the money even mean anything at that point? Like, I can go upstairs and draw me some, an old face on some, green paper. It's like, we talk about all of this debt. Now, I can understand if we borrow from another country or things like that, being in debt to those people. But if I'm upstairs just with me and my little printer, like,
or if you're a government official with a printer.
Yeah, if I'm a government official with a printer, and here I am passing this off, and saying, well, this is good. Is it good? And who are we in debt? Am I in debt to myself? Like, when I take money out of my little box under my bed and then I put a little IOU slip in it? Like, I don't know.
Like, Monique, you are hitting on the real core question. So there are some economists who will say, oh, government debt, don't worry about it because we owe it to ourselves. That's a common expression of folks who say, really, there's nothing to worry about when it comes to government debt. Well, the main type of debt instrument that governments use is, I'll use the US example, is what's called a US Treasury security. Okay. So the money is owed to whoever holds these pieces of paper called securities. And there's a few different kinds. There's what's called a treasury bill, treasury notes, a few other things. I'm not going to get too technical here, but the money's owed to the bondholders. Well, wouldn't you guess it that some of the biggest bondholders are the already very, very wealthy? They buy large amounts of bonds because a bond is a guaranteed payment. Like, these securities are a guaranteed payment sometime in the future. Now, I know these numbers are going to sound crazy to most folks, but if I buy a US Treasury bill in the amount of $5 million and I can get a 1.5% return on that in a few months, well, that's $750,000 coming back at me, guaranteed. Okay. So bondholders are the people to whom this money is owed. And there are people in the general public. There are other foreign governments, other foreign individuals, but those are your bondholders. Okay. Now, remember what I said earlier about sort of that trickle down, what we call a Cantillon effect? What winds up happening to the middle class is that they look around at rising prices and you can start to say, well, I got to beat that. I've got to put my money in a risky investment. Now, you might not get that money back. That money might go to zero. You might not get any kind of gain on that. But if you're that middle class person and you got 7% inflation, I know I should not, as a believer, use this word lightly, but I'm going to use it. You are a fool if you put your money as a middle class person into a bond that gets you 1.5% when inflation is increasing at 7.5%.
Right.
So who are the only people that are looking to get into these bonds? In other words, who does the federal government owe the money to in the end? The already wealthy. So that's the system that's at work. And, well, it's working for a few.
And then at the same time, while they're kind of waiting for those bonds to come into maturity, there's also this simultaneous process of prices for goods and services being bid up. Right. And then that, I think, creates a system for the people at the bottom where they're continually, they're just doing their day-to-day life. They're just trying to support their families, make a living. And they don't realize that all of this money manipulation is happening at this top level, and the rich really do get richer through crony capitalism, and it does create a system of injustice because regular people don't have this, can't even get to the same level of participation.
But I think that's on one hand, like that's looking at the I would say end user, the consumer. But it also happens. I would have to imagine that this happens to the mom and pop shop, or just the person who, you know, has a little store or a kiosk in the mall, because now the goods are going up, and I would assume that people aren't buying the way that they were because things are inflated pricing. So now this store is going to be forced to go out of business because they can't, you know, or lay people off, or, you know, whatever. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct, right? Because again, I'll use some things, some terms that you're going to want to jot down, but mom and pop stores, they're bidding on, let's say you got a local restaurant, okay? They're bidding on the same milk prices. They're bidding on the same wheat prices that have been bid up through these processes that we've described. And you see an ever escalating amount of costs that they've got to deal with. And so it's no wonder that wage increases for their employees are maybe a little bit slow in developing, because look, when you go to buy a gallon of milk from a wholesaler, you're not going to negotiate the price, and it's either take it or leave it today. Well, if you need to keep operating, you got to keep up with those prices on the cost side. And you're single mom, your young person comes in asking for a raise, and it's not out of, especially in these cases that I'm describing, it's not a case of being Scrooge McDuck. It's the reality that these other costs are rapidly accelerating day by day. Well, even the most sort of aggressive employee who's looking for a pay raise, they're not going to come in every 3 months. They might come in 6 months. You know, you come in for your annual review at the end of the year talking about a pay raise. Meanwhile, the price of milk's going up every day. And so this is a challenge to keep people employed in those smaller or medium-sized enterprises.
Yeah.
And so Monique, you absolutely hit it on the head. And now, as you said earlier, the siren call of increasing minimum wages added on top of that. Okay. You're already paying increased prices on these resources. And now the government's going to step in and force you to pay more for the employees. And it's tough for some of those small places even to stay open, and they got to adjust resources and staffing and all of that in response to this sort of situation. And so I'm very animated about this, because this truly is a justice issue. When we live in an inflationary world like the one we're describing, take a big box retailer, okay? They benefit by the inflation, okay? They have stock buybacks. They, their employees are vested in buying stock in that company, and their properties are bid up. Their net worth goes up, but not so much for the small mom and pop. And
Yeah.
This is what, as we look throughout the scriptures, Old Testament and New Testament, how unequal weights and measures, partiality in dealings, whether it's in a justice system or an economic system, is an abomination before God. And that's I feel like that's where we've got to be aiming our prophetic speech as Christians when it comes to this issue.
Well, that's the perfect segue to the next thing we want to get into, is kind of like looking at this biblically. I just want to give a quick example. You and I enjoy a certain Mediterranean food restaurant here in town. And it just so happens that the owner of that works in the office next door to us in our new office building. It just so happened that way.
Yeah.
Like we've enjoyed this restaurant for a while. Just happened to find out that our neighbor in our new office building is the co-owner in that with his father, and they're Christians. They're immigrants from Syria.
Yeah.
And they're a Christian family, and they have 3 or 4 restaurants here locally of their Mediterranean food, fast casual kind of place. And we went in their restaurant recently and noticed that their prices had
gone
really shot up. But this is an everyday example of like, you know, they're not big time buyers, you know, of the food. They're just trying to feed their customers, pay their employees, and stay in business, given all the California labor regulations. And now their food is so expensive, it's almost prohibitive to go there, which has this domino effect of inflation as a result of all this corruption. Then mom and pop, who are giving jobs to regular people, providing a valuable good for us as customers, in order for them to stay in business, they have to keep raising their prices. But if you go to, you know, a local like big box chain restaurant where they're buying in massive quantities, they can afford to stave off or slow down some of those price increases. But even at those places, the prices have gone up.
Yeah.
Right.
And but they have more of a cushion to fall back on than the mom and pop restaurant. And it, you know, it's this corruption has very real impact to small business owners, and that is a backbone traditionally of our economy. And it seems like through COVID, so many things are shifting to big box stores, big chain restaurants, because they had special exemptions during COVID. And at least in our area, and a lot of the smaller places had to stay shut down.
Yes.
And it all just seems so corrupt. And my question in the back of my mind that I keep asking Monique about is, you know, you hear all of the social justice people, the big Eva voices. Where are they on this issue? Where are they on calling out inflation and crony capitalism? Now, I hear them talking about capitalism in general as being an expression of whiteness, which to me just shows me they don't really understand very much about economics. But I'm wondering, where are the social justice people?